woman was frantically banging her head against the glass in front of her. This scene was witnessed by Lisa, who had come to the hospital for a prenatal checkup. Seeing the woman staring at her with a bloodied face, Lisa suddenly remembered something and turned to run. She ran back to the car as fast as she could. Facing her sister's confused gaze, Lisa quickly explained, "That thing from overseas that drives people crazy has spread here." Before her sister could figure out what was happening, an out-of-control car crashed right in front of them. Lisa immediately urged her sister to get out of there. They hadn't driven far when they hit a red light. A car passing by ignored it and sped through. Then, an explosion sounded from behind them. Her sister no longer insisted on waiting for the light. She stepped on the gas and drove through. By now, the streets were in complete chaos. Her sister's phone suddenly rang from the back seat, but just as Lisa turned to grab the phone, her sister saw something. Suddenly, tears streamed from her eyes. Even her pupils changed. Then, she started swerving wildly on the road. Lisa quickly grabbed the steering wheel while shouting, but by now, her sister had clearly lost her mind. Her sister climbed out of the car first, but she didn't care about her pregnant sister behind her. Instead, she stumbled toward the middle of the road. Then, she glanced back at Lisa. Looking at the street filled with screams and explosions, Lisa completely panicked. All she knew was to run with the panicking crowd in this crazy city, but she already had difficulty moving and was soon knocked down. Then, a kind woman ran over to help her up. But the next moment, just like Lisa's sister, she walked toward a burning car as if possessed. Just as Lisa was at a loss, a black guy ran over and helped her up. At the urging of the kind-hearted Jim, a group of people took shelter in his house. A bald man holding a gun angrily told Lisa that the woman earlier was his wife, who had died trying to save him. Lisa could only keep saying sorry. With the help of the homeowner, Jim, many people were rescued. Everyone kept making phone calls, trying to reach their loved ones, but no one could get through. The news soon reported on the incident. This unknown force is sweeping the globe. The entire nation is now under a level 1 alert, and everyone is urged to stay home and wait for rescue. Then, Gangzy analyzed that this mysterious force affects humans through sight, causing them to fall into an unknown state and ultimately commit suicide. For now, let's call this force the evil spirit. So what everyone needs to do now is not to look at the outside world. His analysis was agreed upon by everyone, so everyone immediately sealed all the windows. Time quickly passed, and 3 days later arrived. The group's food supplies were running low. Then, a knocking sound came from outside the door. Everyone immediately tensed up. The bald guy immediately spoke up, saying not to open the door, but faced with the pleas for help from outside, Jack still decided to rescue them. Upon hearing this, Lisa immediately picked up the shotgun nearby to prepare for any surprises. Everyone was also startled by his decisive action, but at this moment they couldn't afford to worry about that. Jack instructed everyone to cover their eyes. After everyone was ready, Jack let the person outside in. The newcomer was a chubby pregnant woman named Ella. Then the bald guy mocked Lisa, telling her to put the gun down if she didn't know how to use it. Upon hearing this, Lisa immediately demonstrated. This move completely stunned everyone. They learned from Ella that the outside world was still in chaos. Now, with one more person, it meant one more mouth to feed. Their food was almost gone, but without vision, the group couldn't go out to search. Then Jim mentioned he had installed many cameras around his house, since they couldn't use their naked eyes to directly observe this new world. Perhaps the digitally converted images on the monitors would be fine, but clearly, this action was full of unknown dangers. In the end, Jim still thought it was okay and decided to take the gamble. He had everyone tie him to the chair. Jack then handed him the remote control. After everyone left the room, Jim turned on the monitor. Soon, a gentle breeze swept across the screen. Then, a shadow slowly emerged. In the next moment, Jim's expression changed. Immediately after, everyone heard strange noises coming from upstairs. They realized something must have happened to Jim. They hurried upstairs, but they were too late. Everyone immediately covered their eyes. The bald man was the first to find the monitor and stomped on it, shattering it. Only then did people dare to open their eyes. However, it was already too late. Jim was dead. Another few days passed. By now, the food was completely exhausted. The rescue they were hoping for still hadn't arrived. If they didn't go out to find food soon, they would all starve to death here. Then, Gangzy said, he knew where there was a large amount of food. On the day, the evil spirits broke out. He happened to lock up the supermarket at his workplace, so that place must still be untouched. Now, they needed to organize an exploration team. After discussion, the team members were quickly decided. Then Jack suggested they could drive there. What they needed to do was paint all the windows. Then, relying on navigation and the car's radar, they could feel their way through. For safety, they also taped newspapers inside the car. Everything was ready. The group opened the garage door. Following the navigation's guidance, they set off. Jack kept a close eye on the distance, measuring radar on the screen. They bumped and dodged obstacles along the way. Suddenly, the radar showed an obstacle ahead of them. Jack thought it was just a truck. He prepared to reverse and go around it. But the next moment, the rear radar also sounded an alarm. This made everyone extremely nervous. Immediately after, a dark shadow swept over the sunroof. Then, all the radars started beeping. The car body also began to shake violently. Clearly, they were surrounded by evil spirits. Jack made up his mind, stomped on the gas, and sped off. Fortunately, they were already near the supermarket. They safely reached their destination. The few of them, blindfolded, felt their way to the front door. Gangsy, trembling with fear, unlocked the door. They finally managed to enter the supermarket. After some fumbling to confirm all the windows were closed, everyone took off their blindfolds. Looking at the dazzling array of goods before them, the group finally showed long-lost smiles. Everyone grabbed shopping carts and started splitting up to gather supplies. Lisa discovered a few small birds that had actually survived. She decided to take them back. At that moment, Baldy called everyone together and suggested that the supplies here were sufficient. Enough for them to live here for a year without any problem. They didn't need to risk going back at all. However, Lisa strongly objected to this. She couldn't just watch the people in the house, waiting to die over there. Just as the two of them were arguing endlessly about this, a sudden knocking sound came from the door. A man's cry for help came from inside the storage room. Jack told everyone to cover their eyes, then opened the door a crack.
Hello? Please let me in, I'm trapped.
Gangsy immediately recognized the person inside as his colleague. While they were still trying to determine if the man was safe, the birds that Lisa had found started to become restless and agitated. The next moment, the man violently slammed the door open. Several people desperately held the door shut to keep him from entering. The man's mental state was clearly not normal. Seeing this, Gangsy immediately ran over and pushed the man back inside. But he himself ended up getting locked inside as well, before they could even catch their breath. A pool of blood began to seep in from under the door. It was clear that Gangsy had already met a tragic end. The others didn't dare to stay there any longer. They immediately drove back to the villa with the supplies. That very night, the young couple sneaked into the garage behind everyone's back. By the time the others heard the commotion, it was already too late. Now, the only means of transportation that allowed them to go out and search for supplies was gone. They were completely trapped inside this villa. That night, just as Lisa was trying to contact the outside world via walkie-talkie, Ella actually let a Kenny in without permission. When Lisa found out, she immediately grabbed a gun and pointed it at him. The others heard the commotion and rushed over right away. From Kenny's account, everyone learned that he had been hiding at a friend's place before. But not long ago, a group of people broke in. Then they forced everyone to open their eyes and look at the outside world. He was the only one who managed to escape in the chaos. The most terrifying part was that the intruders weren't blindfolded. They weren't affected by the evil spirits at all. But the man's story didn't convince Baldy. Baldy snatched the gun from Lisa's hands, then ordered the man to get out of the house immediately. If anyone had a problem with it, they could leave with him. The others tried to calm Baldy down and pleaded for the man, but Baldy wasn't having it. The next moment, the old lady knocked him out from behind with a bottle to prevent him from doing anything extreme. They locked Baldy in the garage. Unexpectedly, the next day, Ella suddenly felt a sharp pain in her stomach. She was about to give birth. The old lady quickly told everyone to prepare, but then Lisa's water broke too. Jack noticed and immediately helped her upstairs. Two women going into labor at the same time was something nobody expected. Kenny seemed especially happy. He sat in the living room and took out a sketchbook from his bag. It was filled with drawings of all kinds of evil spirits. Lisa's baby was delivered successfully first. Hearing the baby's cry from upstairs, he put down the paintbrush in his hand. Then he picked up the birdcage and placed it in the refrigerator right in front of Baldy. Next, he went to the window and tore off all the coverings. When Jack came downstairs, he immediately spotted the painting on the table. Prompted by Baldy, he took the birdcage out of the refrigerator. But before he could set it down, Kenny knocked him out from behind. Then he walked up to Baldy. Baldy stared at Kenny's eyes in shock, unable to speak. The next moment, Kenny opened the garage door. At that moment, Ella also successfully gave birth to her baby. Kenny walked in as well. After looking at both children, he went over to the window. Lisa and the old lady quickly covered their eyes, but Ella, in her daze, saw outside the window. Immediately, the look in her eyes changed. Lisa realized Ella was beyond saving. She could only shout, telling her to hand over the child. Fortunately, with her last shred of sanity, Ella placed the baby in Lisa's hands. Then she resolutely charged toward the window and jumped out. Lisa immediately pulled the blanket over herself and the baby. The old lady was dragged by Kenny to the window. Then he forcibly pried her eyes open. The next moment, he stabbed the scissors into his own neck. Right after, Kenny sat down on the bed, trying to snatch the two children. Just then, Baldy arrived in time with a gun. He closed his eyes tightly, trying to pinpoint the sound, searching for Kenny's location, then fired a shot, hitting the other guy in the shoulder. Kenny wasn't backing down either, and charged straight at Bald Head. They both tumbled down to the floor below. But before Bald Head could catch his breath, Kenny stabbed him in the chest with a pair of scissors. Just then, Jack woke up nearby. The two struggled desperately over the weapon. Fortunately, in the end, it was Jack who survived. Time quickly jumped ahead. 5 years. The two kids were now 5 years old. One day, while Lisa was out searching for supplies, she suddenly heard the sound of a car engine. Clearly, it was the cultists who didn't need to wear blindfolds. After returning to the shelter, Lisa told Jack about it. Jack decided that next time they went out for supplies, they would go together. That day, a man's voice suddenly came over the walkie-talkie. He said his name was Rick. They had a shelter over there, right at the very end of the river, with enough supplies inside. Just follow the river, all the way down to reach it. But there is a short stretch in the middle where the current is really rough. Once you get through that safely, you'll hear a lot of birds chirping. Just follow the sound of the birds to find them. Jack thought they should give it a try. After all, they were completely out of ammo and supplies. There were no supplies left nearby to keep them alive, but Lisa strongly objected, believing it was a trap set by those cultists. The two had a huge argument over it. In the end, Jack gave in. He decided to stay there with Lisa. That day, they went out together to search for supplies. They came across a house. Lisa found a box of strawberry cookies. They happily shared the cookies with the children, telling them this was what strawberries tasted like. But before they could fully sink into that rare moment of joy, the sound of an engine approached from outside. The two immediately realized they'd been spotted by that group, so Jack decided to go alone to lure them away, while Lisa led the children to escape through the back door. Though Lisa was extremely reluctant, she had no choice. Jack quickly opened the door, his eyes still covered. Outside was indeed a group of people who didn't need blindfolds. One of them held a hook, ready to remove Jack's blindfold. Just then, another spotted Lisa fleeing. Hearing this, Jack immediately opened fire, killing two and wounding one, but he himself was also shot by them. The injured cultist went after Lisa. The remaining two stayed to deal with Jack. Jack knew he stood no chance if he kept the blindfold on, so he decisively removed it. He swiftly killed the two cultists from behind. Then he picked up their weapons and chased after the last person. Suddenly, an evil wind rushed at Jack from behind. His eyes immediately changed. With the help of strong willpower, Jack successfully killed the last one. After that, he couldn't hold on any longer. Back at the shelter, Lisa was heartbroken. During these 5 years of post-apocalyptic life, deep affection had grown between her and Jack. Now that her lover was gone, she was left alone with two children. In this post-apocalyptic world, after grieving and barely surviving, she decided to take the kids to that so-called refuge to try their luck. Before leaving, she repeatedly told the kids the journey would be long, so they must strictly follow her instructions the whole way, and under no circumstances should they take off their blindfolds on their own. After getting the kids' confirmation, Lisa placed a bird in a box as an alarm. Then, following the pre-laid guide rope, she reached the river. After making sure the kids were seated firmly in the boat, they officially embarked on this journey, but they had only been on the river for half a day when a man's voice suddenly appeared. He even shouted for Lisa and the others to remove their blindfolds. Lisa immediately panicked and told the kids to lie down and hide. Then she took out her pistol to defend herself, but she couldn't determine the man's location at all. She could only fire 2 random shots around as a warning. But the next moment, the man rushed up and knocked the pistol out of Lisa's hand. In panic, Lisa kept kicking wildly, but the man was determined to remove her blindfold. Luckily, Lisa had prepared a machete in advance. She swung it desperately in front of her. Finally, she successfully took down the man. However, fate wasn't ready to let them off that easily. A day later, they crashed into a long-rusted truck in the water. The little boy instantly fell into the river. Fortunately, Lisa reacted quickly and pulled him back up, but the supply bag had just fallen into the water and disappeared. To reach the shelter successfully, Lisa had no choice but to risk going ashore to search for supplies. She told the two kids to stay hidden on the boat and left the bird behind as an alarm. Then, she took out the fishing reel. After securing it, she clipped it to her waist and began feeling her way forward. Not long after, she actually found a house. Lisa cautiously entered and slowly removed her blindfold. At that moment, the line on the reel ran out perfectly, so she tied it to a bed by the door. Then, she started searching for useful supplies. Suddenly, a strange noise came from behind her. It seemed someone outside was pulling on the line she left. Even the bed was being dragged. Lisa quickly grabbed her pistol and went on alert. Seeing the commotion outside had stopped, she immediately put her blindfold back on, ready to leave. Unexpectedly, the evil spirit was right beside her. Lisa raised her pistol and started firing wildly. Then, she quickly escaped along the rope. Meanwhile, the little girl heard the gunshots. She then picked up the rope and tied it around her own waist. Then she groped forward, trying to find Lisa, but she hadn't gone far before being surrounded by evil spirits. The next moment, fortunately, the person pulling her back was Lisa, who had rushed over. Regarding the little girl's unauthorized departure, Lisa was very angry, but now was not the time to lecture her. The group once again drifted on the river by boat. The three of them had been traveling on the river for 2 days now. Ahead was the rapids mentioned by the man on the walkie-talkie. Lisa gave the two children her final instructions. Soon, the boat would become very bumpy. The surrounding noise would also become very loud. As long as they could endure this part of the journey, what awaited them would be a bright future. The boat soon entered the rapids area. The entire hull was tossed up and down by the rushing water. Lisa could only brace with the oar, trying her best to maintain balance. The two children clung tightly to the boat. However, the boat ultimately capsized. Lisa instantly lost sight of the children. She could only keep shouting in the torrent, hoping for a response from the children. Then she suddenly heard the boy shout, so she immediately swam toward the direction of the sound. Just as she found the boy, she heard the sound of a bell coming from another place. That was exactly what she had prepared for the two children earlier. The little girl kept shaking the bell. Lisa eventually managed to bring the little boy and find her, and immediately put his blindfold back on properly. Then she checked the birds in the box, and they were all alive. Next, they just needed to follow the bird calls to reach their destination. Lisa led the two children through the jungle. Suddenly, she heard several voices in her ears, all telling her to remove the blindfold. Lisa knew it was all the evil spirits doing, so she kept walking forward. But the next moment, she stumbled over a tree root in a daze, fell into a ditch, and passed out. Luckily, she woke up not long after. She immediately climbed out of the ditch and started looking for the children. But by then, the children were also being lured by the evil spirits. Lisa desperately shouted that the voice wasn't hers and told them not to take off their blindfolds.
Boy, girl, where are you? Don't take my children! Do not take my children!
Lisa quickly found the boy by following the bell sounds, but there was no sign of the girl for a while. Just as she was getting extremely anxious,
Too scared of you.
Lisa suddenly realized something. She immediately shouted an apology to the girl, saying she shouldn't have yelled at her. She also promised she would change in the future, and said she would take them to see lots and lots of beautiful things. She just hoped the girl would forgive her and come back to her. Fortunately, the girl eventually followed Lisa's voice and found her way back. Lisa excitedly hugged both children in her arms, but their escape journey wasn't over yet. The evil spirits kept luring her from all around. Lisa could only try to distinguish the bird calls from those voices, and run desperately in that direction. She soon felt a wooden door and frantically knocked on it in excitement. The next moment, the door opened. The people inside immediately checked their eyes and found nothing unusual. Then, a man named Rick led them in. When Lisa removed her blindfold, she realized that this was actually a school for the blind. There were many people gathered here. A large portion of them were blind. Green plants covered the entire ceiling. Many small birds flew freely among them. Seeing this, Lisa also opened the box and released the bird inside. She and her two children finally gained a new life.